One of the tech industry's sources of carbon credits is in conflict with Kenyan herders. The USDA will republish climate change information online following a farmer's lawsuit. And Valve made a Steam Deck verified program for things that aren't Steam Decks. It's Wednesday, May 14th, and this is your morning tech news roundup from Engadget. A conservation program in Kenya that tech companies like Netflix and Meta rely on for carbon credits is in conflict with local herders. That's according to a report from the Wall Street Journal. The issue led to the program run by the Northern Kenya Rangelands Carbon Project to be put on hold and could ultimately invalidate credits the organization has already sold. This specific carbon capture program uses grass spread across 4.7 million acres of land, communally owned by groups like the Maasai, to trap carbon in the soil. The project gets to use the land, and in exchange, the herders get a portion of the revenue from carbon credit sales. The issue that's put the whole program at risk is a conflict over the herders' farming practices. The local agricultural community has used the same grazing techniques for generations without issue, but the Northern Kenya Rangelands Carbon Project wants them to rotate livestock grazing so grasses can recover and lock more carbon into the soil. Some herders, frustrated with the rules, have gone as far as to claim that they were misled when they originally agreed to participate in the conservation program. Many tech companies rely on purchasing carbon credits to help offset the negative environmental impacts of rapid technological development. You don't get to run servers, streaming movies, or training AI models 24 hours a day without consuming a lot of electricity and water. Carbon offset projects plant trees or run agricultural programs like the one in Kenya to pull carbon from the atmosphere, selling credits to companies to absolve them of their sins. Clearly, these carbon projects have not always been actually beneficial for the people who live on the land they impact. The Wall Street Journal report it's worth a read and gets into what the fallout of all of this could be, but at the very least, tech companies branding themselves as carbon neutral seems like it's going to get trickier. In the early days of President Donald Trump's second administration, federal agencies, including the U.S. Department of Agriculture, were ordered to remove information about climate change from their websites. Now, the USDA has committed to reinstating the deleted content following a lawsuit on behalf of the Northeast Organic Farming Association of New York, the National Resources Defense Council, and the Environmental Working Group. According to a letter sent earlier this week to a district court judge, the agency has already begun the restoration process and expects to substantially complete the effort in about 2 weeks. The material removed from USDA sites back in February included content about climate-smart agriculture, forest conservation, climate change adaptation, and clean energy project investments in rural areas. The trio of plaintiffs sued on the basis that removing that information violated the Freedom of Information Act that allows public access to important federal records, as well as failing to provide advanced notice required by the Paperwork Reduction Act and without the reasoned decision-making of the Administrative Procedure Act. The USDA said that it will restore the climate change-related web content that was removed post-inauguration, including all USDA web pages and interactive tools enumerated in the plaintiff's complaint. Stephanie Krent, staff attorney with Knight First Amendment Institute, which helped file the lawsuit, said, "This is a major victory and an important first step. Members of the public, including our clients, rely on information from USDA to understand how climate change is affecting our nation's forests, food supply, and energy systems. USDA was wrong to remove those web pages in the first place, and it must comply with federal law going forward." Steam announced earlier this week that it will offer a compatibility rating that will designate when a game is supported on the company's operating system. The Steam OS Compatibility Assessment is slated to roll out in the next few weeks. This metric is an extension of the Steam Deck Verified program, and it will award a check mark to games based on a data subset within that vetting process. In other words, game developers will not have to take any additional steps if they're already completing Steam Deck Verified. On the player end, compatible games will show a blue check mark when viewed in the Steam Store and Steam Client while running the operating system on a device other than the Steam Deck. The announcement is mostly a future-proofing move. Right now, the Lenovo Legion Go S is the only handheld besides the Steam Deck that's officially running Valve's operating system. But Lenovo was already teasing a second iteration of the hardware at CES this year, and Valve clearly has plans for the number of Steam OS platforms to grow. The landscape for handheld gaming could start looking quite different if Steam OS really takes off as a standalone service. Thanks for listening. There's more to these stories and more tech news at Engadget.com. This episode featured journalism from Anna Washenko and Ian Carlos Campbell and was voiced and produced from the sound studios of Spoken Layer. Enjoy your day, and I'll be back tomorrow with more tech news from Engadget.